My name is Christine Shear and I'm a graduate student. The name of my project is called Feature the Creature Stroll, and it's for the Discovering Place class taught by Sama Al-Shaibi. These are the basic points of my project. For my first chronicle of walking or gleaning of information, the exercise was about mapping through one of the body's senses. Creature Walk 1, Mapping Touch, was accomplished by following around a desert tortoise for 40 minutes on my belly. Towards the late afternoon, the sun is decreasing its angle of incidence on the earth, so it was possible to lay my body on the desert floor and gather sensations of prickly rocks, poking sticks, sharp spines, rough sand, and painfully scraped surfaces of boulders. Creature Walk 2, Mapping by Sound. The creature that I was on this particular walk was an urban pedestrian, and the exercise was listening. People talk about how quiet it is here in town when the university students leave. My investigation of place by using the sense of hearing revealed layers and layers of information. From the sound of my own footsteps and breathing, there were also bird calls, construction noises, the din of traffic, far off trains and airplanes, cafe conversations, and the laughter of children around the corner. Mapping by sight. I mapped this site as if I were Tucson's native Inca ground dove. My observation? Today is cool and blustery and the wind makes it hard to balance on the rocks next to the railroad tracks. The sun is not really out and this is dangerous time because this place does not normally know sunlessness. With no sunshine to heat the rocks, it is more difficult to find food. The tossed aside bread and leftover beer and pizza rinds cast off less of a stink with no sun. There is one saving grace, however, and that is no trouble from the human beings. They are transient and invisible like me. This piece is Project 1 and it's entitled Footprints. It was inspired by the ephemeral works of artist Andy Goldsworthy. Footprints are wonderfully unique and have many shapes depending on what creature has left them behind. I wanted to create some unusual footprints that could be seen by runners using a pathway along the Rillito River in Tucson, Arizona. With a large garden shovel, I dug 8 gigantic prints that, when viewed from a great distance, revealed a prehistoric-like scene. Mapping social territory. I've played music shows at the Historic Hotel Congress in their performance space. This exercise was about mapping a scene by eliminating everything except what would be of interest specifically to a musician. I walked around the entire block. I wandered around inside the bar, inside the Cup Cafe, in the tap room. I wandered back and forth in front and around the stage area. I watched bands setting up and doing sound checks, and I also observed people from the parking lot across the street. The resulting map proves useful only to those special creatures known as musicians. Following the desire lines of the perimeter of a park near the oleander hedge led me to more spaces and bushes where people made pathways to other destinations. In one area, I discovered that desire lines were made by people who were living in the brush at the south end of the park. These homeless people had created their own pathways in the areas underneath the cover of the overhanging branches that shielded them from the prying eyes of park visitors. Project 2, Tagging Bipedal Specimens. I love graffiti. I think it's exciting, bold, colorful, and has an aesthetic that conveys the chaotic and complex interplay of human existence with the dynamics of city life. As the graffiti artist or tagger uses spray paint to tag a building or a wall, I wanted to mark my social territory by tagging humans. In street vernacular, tagging is a way of marking an object. In scientific terminology, tagging is a way of marking specific organisms. As a play on both of these definitions, I decided to literally tag human beings as a way of marking my existence on my social space. A cocoon protects and insulates. The aural cocoon that is my iPod was the laboratory for this particular creature walk in which the urban environment was transformed. For the first hour, my personal soundtrack defined my mood and allowed me to lay claim to the space. For the second hour, however, the headphones came off, and as a direct comparison, the absence of the musical soundtrack made me feel exposed, naked, and prone to the whims of each passing person's glance. The cacophony of sounds around me, such as traffic and construction and people yelling, and airplanes and birds and the whipping up of the wind, seemed overwhelming in contrast. This creature walk was about making a subtle change to the fabric of everyday life. This creature walk is about wearing a collar. It's about being collared, controlled, domesticated, or kept. I chose to make a small modification to my daily life for at least 5 hours. I sustained this behavior modification, the act of wearing a collar as a domesticated animal, as I walked around in my normal life in public and private space. I wanted to put myself in the place of a pet, like someone's dog or cat, for example, of having a reminder around my neck of a form of societal subjugation. If you had to walk in the name of someone for something, like a cause, where would you go? How would you act? How would you walk? People all over the world walk or run in the names of those they love to raise awareness. Some don't walk, instead they... Inspired by the works of artists such as Alfredo Jar and Kim Suja, using physical presence to create a break in continuity is effective for generating awareness. For Project 3, an upscale mall was a perfect place to inject myself visually and aurally. I chose to disrupt the public in a subtle fashion to raise awareness about the creatures who live here in the Sonoran Desert and share with them free information if inquired about some of the animals not normally exploited as attractions of the desert Southwest. From this experience, I learned that even fake public space on the private property of the mall will tolerate a disruption if there is no perceived threat to profit generation by the stores, that it is still possible, even in a manufactured public space, hope for some sort of interaction with the community, and that a disruption for some people is actually a welcome thing. Our immediate experience of place is significantly impacted by alternative modes of transportation, such as walking. Rather than situating the urban environment in a series of points to bounce between like we do on a daily basis in our cars, perhaps it is more revealing and more interesting to examine movement through the environment with a critical eye. Just like the walking rituals of the flaneur of 19th century France, this kind of practice draws upon symbolic, imaginative, and sensory experiences. Investigation of social structures within a given place by penetrating cultural scenes and examining my role in relation to place gives it new meaning.